Good afternoon. It's McCollum on Business. I'm Stephen McCollum. For the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to get you updated on what's happening around the business world. Stocks we're paying attention to, of course, the Market Watch, and then local and national stories you need to know coming in after the weekend. And folks, it's kind of an interesting one here today. We are waiting for some data to come out later on this week, specifically critical inflation reports this week. Wednesday, we have the producer price index coming out on a Wednesday for August. Then the consumer price index coming out on Thursday of this week. The market and investors be paying close attention to those, especially after those weaker than expected hiring information job reports last week that came out. Specifically, the last one there, the non-farms payroll report that came out on Friday. The private one on Thursday as well. So it's going to be interesting that people are going to look to here, because obviously the lackluster job reports gave a lot of people confidence that the feds are going to cut the rates here coming up in their meeting that happens here in the next week or so. It's going to be an interesting week around here. And also, glad you're joining us. Well, I'm not glad you're joining us, but I see you're here, right? Well, that means you didn't win the $1.7 billion Powerball prize that happened on Saturday night either. Because I'll just tell you right now, you wouldn't know I won the lottery, but there would be signs like I wouldn't be here right now. So I'm assuming that's why you're here also. 2 tickets did go into it, though. One in Texas, one in Missouri. And boy, they got to be disappointed. They're splitting that $1.7 billion Powerball prize. The cash money on that, by the way, only slackers, $870-something million out there. So unfortunately, you're here with me today, but we'll make it fun and exciting, and maybe next time it gets up that big, what we'll look at. But for now, let's check on what we can control a little bit with where our money is with the Market Watch. New records today as well, right? Everything, earlier today at least was up in terms of the S&P 500, NASDAQ as well. NASDAQ did, in fact, hit that new record today. S&P 500 up as well. Dow Jones is basically flat all day. As you can see, Dow Jones right now is down the 62 points, 45,352. S&P 500, as I said, up here. Just everything's up on this inflation data. People are expecting good numbers to come in. So S&P's up 6 points to 64.86. Right now, NASDAQ also up 91 points today. 21,791. NASDAQ, Broadcom, artificial intelligence stocks are all up today, 2% or so. From that level, driving those two indexes up. The Russell 2K, though, is down about 3 points right now, 2388 is what that is trading at right now for that small cap index. And then Bitcoin, well, it's up 1,100 points today, just over that at 1154. Well, it's back into that 112,000 range. It was in that 110, 111,000 all weekend long. 112,272 for Bitcoin right now. And if the inflation numbers do come in here with these reports this week, do come in good, you'll see Bitcoin get a little bit of a rise here later on as the week goes on. Another thing that's just hitting the wire right now, well, worker confidence. And this is kind of where if you need to find a new job out there, well, it's a new record low according to the New York Fed survey. That's hitting the wire right now as well. So market slowdown is here in terms of the job side. We saw that last week with the jobs reports, and where we are looking going into this Fed time here. Company stocks we're paying attention to right now. Well, the first one we're going to look at, the online e-commerce company called Etsy is what we're going to look at. They are 7.53% up right now. When I looked at it about an hour ago, it was only 6% up. So another bigger jump going into this program here. So it's on track for its 4th straight daily advance. This is why it caught my eye today. So last week, all they did was they announced they appointed a new Chief Product and Technology Officer effective September 25th. And by announcing that person in that position, 4 straight days of a daily advance, if it stays up today as well for Etsy here moving forward. Canada Goose is the next stock we're going to look at. Winter coat manufacturer, obviously headed into the winter season. around most of the country. Will eventually cool down here in Arizona, but right now, Canada Goose, well, it's up 14.41% here today. TD Cowen, that investment company, upgraded its investment option. They moved them to buy rating. So why did they move them to buy rating? Well, the analyst there at TD Cowen called the brand's move to year-round lifestyle outwear product alongside recent modernization efforts. They said all of that effort is going to cultivate a more culturally relevant creative vision for Canada Goose. And I didn't know that. I didn't know Canada Goose didn't do summer wear, for instance, right? They focused on the cold weather stuff, and obviously expanding your product line means more sales. Well, move to buy here by TD Cowen, 14.41% up here today for Canada Goose. And then finally, EchoStar. And we'll get more details on this story coming up here in the story in just a little bit, but they're up big today, 17.54% right now. Well, it's because they're selling more of those Spectrum licenses. Last month, it was AT&T bought them for several $1 billion. Well, now SpaceX is buying some Spectrum licenses for about $17 billion. So, and they're splitting it up in a cash and stock deal that we'll talk about here when we get to that story as well. Interesting enough, because of this deal being announced with EchoStar, well, I looked at other telecommunication stocks. Well, they're all down today off of this news. T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, all down 1.5, 2 percentage points here today between them. They're fluctuating. I think right now they're all about around 1.5% down here today. So that EchoStar sales, AT&T and SpaceX buying those is a big deal for those telecommunication stocks. So we have that story coming up for you in just a little bit. Later on, when we come back and look at the market watch, we'll look at some ones that Robinhood finally getting the news that there's been a lot of speculation over the last couple months. They finally got the news that they were waiting for. Robinhood, AppLovin, Nutanix, and TransUnion are all stocks we will look at coming up here in the next segment. But first, tariff news out there. And the U.S. government has officially told us that they've collected $31.4 billion in tariff revenues in August by itself. That's the largest monthly amount so far here in 2025. Obviously, this is showing the continued impact of those trade duties on the economy right now. Huge money coming in to our government. Tariff revenues have risen steadily from $17.4 billion back in April. Remember that small amount? $23.9 billion in May, and then $28 billion in June, and then $29 billion in July as well. And then now $31.4 billion, folks. Whew. If you want to look at, they released the numbers so far in September. Right now we're 8 days in. They gave it the number to us over the weekend. I found it. So let's just say 6 days in here and just give it that time frame. Well, the U.S. has brought in a little over $1 billion in those 5-6 days, according to the Treasury statement that came out. So at this current pace, well, the U.S. could collect as much tariff revenue in just a few months as it did during the entire 2024 year. Look at that. Look at that chart right there on top of it. That is outrageous amount of tariff money. And don't forget, that's in a lawsuit right now in terms of, are they legal? They've been deemed illegal by the courts, but they are allowing them to continue. If they does be deemed illegal, well, that means revenue is going to have to go back to these companies, and we lose all of that there. And big numbers here for these tariffs. Of course, it's affecting the economy for more than that reason. And we've talked in the past, right, recently in the last few weeks about that, the small, minimus exception there for shipping goods in under $800. No tariffs on that. Some more interesting numbers here hitting over the weekend because we now know postal traffic into the United States, it's down more than 80% after that Trump administration ended that tariff exception there of $800 and less, the de minimis exception as well. The United Nations Postal Agency came out with these numbers on Saturday, 80% down on top of everything. The Universal Postal Union, they say that they've started rolling out new measures that can help postal operators around the world calculate and actually collect those duties that are for products going out. And then this is all because the U.S. eliminated that de minimis exemption, and then on top of it, these external postage companies from the other parts of the world, they've stopped shipping stuff in because they don't know how to calculate and collect duties. So the postal union's working with them to get them to understand how to calculate it, how to collect it, and things like that, so they can start doing that side. So I gave you the general number there of over 80% down. Here's the exact number. 88 of the postal operators, they've told that union that they have suspended some or all postal services to the United States because they're waiting for a solution to be implemented with those parcels, low-value parcels coming up. We've told you about that last year, not just China and Korea and those places, but we're talking like South America. Even Mexico has stopped it as well. It's coming up, in terms of shipping up here to the United States. So the union said information exchange between postal operators through its electronic network, it showed traffic from 192 member countries. Folks, that's most of the countries in the world. 81% fall, specifically on August 29th compared to the week earlier. August 29th is when that ban on the de minimis exception, how that went away was August 29th. And then that week afterwards, 81% postal down. How much junk are we buying here in America, folks? 81% down for those countries when that exception went away because they're not shipping them to us out there. That is astonishing levels there that we are talking about there. So we have raw numbers coming in after that de minimis exception has gone away. And then the story I was telling you about here when we were talking about EchoStar and specifically their stock going up today. And again, SpaceX, which of course is owned by Elon Musk, has reached that deal, about $17 billion with EchoStar. They're buying those spectrum licenses. SpaceX says that they'll use those licenses to beef up its Starlink satellite network. So these are EchoStar's AWS-4 and H-Block spectrum licenses, if you're in that industry and understand what those are. And so how they're buying it, $8.5 billion in cash and up to $8.5 billion in SpaceX stock is how they are purchasing it. SpaceX will make approximately $2 billion in cash interest payments on EchoStar debt through November of 2027. So EchoStar is getting a lot of help with their debt in this sale also. SpaceX and EchoStar will enter into a long-term commercial agreement, and that's going to allow EchoStar's Boost Mobile subscribers to access SpaceX's next-generation Starlink direct-to-cell service as well. So Boost Mobile getting a big plus in this deal as well. If you remember last month, we told you about AT&T, or in August, right? AT&T spent $23 billion to acquire spectrum licenses from EchoStar as well. And they did a lot of low and mid-band coverage networks when they purchased it at that point. EchoStar did say that they anticipate the AT&T deal and the SpaceX transaction will resolve recent inquiries from the FCC about the rollout of 5G technology in the U.S. As I told you last month when we kind of talked about this, the FCC has been calling for hearings on whether EchoStar was properly using those spectrums that they are now selling. And so basically the FCC was kind of questioning if effort was going out there from EchoStar to make 5G more available to communities all throughout the United States. And so they're trying to squash those inquiries from the government and then getting a lot of cash. I saw obviously the $2 billion in interest payments through 2027 from SpaceX, but then I saw EchoStar plans on getting rid of a lot of debt with these sales of these licenses as well. So a couple of updates for you. And then tomorrow's a big day for one large tech company, specifically Apple out there. Yes, tomorrow they're debuting their new iPhones and other software, iPads, etc. And it's going to be interesting to see because nobody's expecting a big change here from Apple coming out. And then everybody's paying attention to the price increase that comes along with it for tomorrow. But a lot of analysts are saying the biggest challenge for Apple is going to be to write out another ho-hum launch, right? Just a not enthusiastic one. because their rivals, Google, Android, well, their rivals have moved past Apple, and, embedding artificial intelligence into their products and services. You got the foldable phones that are very popular in China, of all places. The competition for Apple is blown by them for that type of stuff, right? The biggest draw this year for Apple tomorrow, well, we don't know for sure, but we're assuming it's going to be that rumored iPhone Air that they should be coming out with. It's a slimmer phone than what Apple has sold before, like your current phone from Apple, a little slimmer. Obviously, taking its name from the company's slender laptop that they call the MacBook Air. Apple would need to, figure out how to pack batteries and cameras into a thinner device. And then, so we're going to see it hopefully tomorrow for the first time, or the anticipation is we'll see it then. But the bigger problem is not just putting those batteries and cameras into that slimmer device. They got to figure out how to price it between the base iPhone 17 models and, of course, those more expensive Pro models out there, because majority of customers that are going to upgrade or buy new phones from Apple are going to want that Air camera coming up, or the Air phone coming out as well. So large number of consumers would be interested in this Air model, and it's going to be what helps people upgrade this year in terms of their technology, or the anticipation is there as well. The bigger news on this year, the slimmer phone, the iPhone Air, if it does preview tomorrow, well, it's going to be the stepping stone towards an iPhone that folds out flat. Those foldable phones that you see, I know Android has them. Other companies have them as well. The Chinese companies that make phones have them as well. Well, why is that important? Well, it's going to act as a platform for an upgraded Siri as well. And, it's going to lead toward that side of things. That's what everybody's anticipating to see come out tomorrow. We'll see if it happens for Apple. I mean, if they're talking about it here, it's probably going to happen. The problem that Apple has with those slimmer phones is, one, everybody wants a slimmer phone. It's very popular out there. We know Samsung, they're in their 7th generation of folding phones. Google, well, they're on their 3rd generation as well. Here's the thing, though, right? Here in America, well, the estimates are that foldable phones are less than 2% of all phone sales. Well, that's not an estimate. They're 2% of phone sales. But the estimate is they will not grow beyond 5% anytime soon here in America. Why does Apple need those foldable phones? Well, because China, the consumers there like foldables, and Apple has been losing market share over there in China as people are switching. We did a story here a couple weeks ago. Even here in America, people are buying the foldable phones here, and Apple loses out if they just don't have one available, and they don't moving forward. So eyes are towards that. I told you the upgrade to Siri kind of a situation. Did a little research onto that as well. Last year, of course, they really hyped up the artificial intelligence for these iPhones. It was disappointing, right? When the phones first came out last year, they pushed it off and said it'd be out in January. Yes, they do interact some artificial intelligence through ChatGPT right now, but nothing to what they said they were going to be out with as well, right? So they delayed all this. They've been behind on it, and they called it engineering setbacks on why they're behind on it. So that's when they leaned into that partnership with ChatGPT, that OpenAI software, to power many of the AI features on their phones. Google's latest flagship phones, though, well, they were largely designed to actually showcase the capability of, Google's AI, Gemini AI, in their phones. Apple is lagging severely in the AI capabilities in their phones. So, interesting enough, it was just announced, kind of a rumor came out as well, according to a recent media report. Apple's in early talks to use Google's Gemini AI, and that's what they want to use to revamp Siri. So are they going to announce that tomorrow is the big question. Incidentally enough, flat phone, the Air Siri revamp there with Gemini AI, they say probably won't be out until 2026 or possibly in the next iPhone release here coming up in a year. So that's what people are looking at here with iPhone and Apple's thing tomorrow. Of course, we'll keep our eye on that tomorrow. It'll be going on while we're doing the show live at 11 o'clock and see if they come out with. But it's going to be just a slow announcement day for Apple tomorrow. That's just kind of a couple things that they're looking at, and it's going to be interesting to see Apple market share shrinking out there. And when we come back here, folks, at McCollum on Business, we keep it rolling. Another look at the market watch. Robinhood, AppLovin, Nutanix, TransUnion, all stocks we're going to pay attention to. And I'm happy for Robinhood. Finally get what they've been wanting and people have been rumored about for a while. I'll tell you about that. Now and then we'll talk some local stories out there. Sorry you didn't win the lottery, but hey, you get me as a consolation prize. McCollum on Business. And we're back here in McCollum on Business. Appreciate you joining us on this Monday edition. And folks, Monday is here. We just went through the national stories and updates you need to know. Got some local stuff coming your way. And of course, we're here live at 11 o'clock. Robat TV is where you catch us live. You can catch us on demand, of course, on Robat TV with your subscription. For those of you, even though we don't do a lot of external advertising for those of you that found the YouTube page, thank you very much as well. This is on demand right now at YouTube as well. No podcast for this show, but free on YouTube right now for you. Share us with your friends as well. Let us know your thoughts on it as we continue to just get you the business information you need to know. Of course, the main event up on demand, Robat TV right now, free podcast system. Anyone you go to for your podcast, it's there as well. Do us a favor and just like and subscribe that. Even if you don't listen to it there because you catch us live or on demand at Robat TV, but also on the YouTube channel as well. Is there Pit Stop every week. Pit Stop goes up on the week's racing events out there. IndyCar season's over. Yesterday over the weekend, we of course had the Xfinity race and then the Cup race yesterday. And the Xfinity series is ready for their playoffs. They are locked in. Cup Series, second of 3 races. I'll get you updated on that. And, of course, look ahead this weekend to the first round of the Xfinity playoffs and first race of the first round of the Xfinity playoffs. Then, of course, the Cup Series cuts happen after the race this weekend. Look for that here as well. Robat TV on demand, and then also on that YouTube page. Free podcast for that on Podbean right now as well, folks. And glad you're here with us. We'll keep this rolling. Let's get right back into that Market Watch. And just everybody's going to be kind of waiting for this inflation data, the PPI, CPI this week coming out. Look at that. Dow Jones is basically flat again. It's been flat most of the day. When we opened up the show, it was down, what was that, 40, 60 points in that range, but back up to basically even again here for the Dow Jones. Just hit even right now. S&P 500 is up to 12 points right now as well. NASDAQ did hit a record today, 110 up for the NASDAQ here with that new record. Russell 2K also flipped to the positive side, plus 2 points right now for that small cap index. Then Bitcoin continuing to hover in that 112,415 range for Bitcoin. That these reports come out in the middle of the week, Wednesday and Thursday, and they're positive. Bitcoin should go up with those as well. So for those of you holding Bitcoin at the higher 118,000, 119,000 range, maybe you'll get some good news here as the week goes on from that side. Stocks we're paying attention to right now. Well, let's look at Robinhood first here. They're the stock trading app out there, up 14.32% here today, folks. Finally, after much speculation and then disappointment the last couple months out there, well, S&P Global said that Robinhood's going to officially join the S&P 500 index. It's going to be effective on trading that opens on September 22nd. So they're finally getting that S&P 500 index. It's been rumored for a couple months that would go, and then they'd get passed over. Well, it's officially happening as well. Then let's look at AppLovin here. Same situation for AppLovin. They will also be joining the S&P 500 index effective. Trading opens September 22nd. They're up 11% here today based off of that news for them as well. Passive index funds must buy shares of companies added to BetSmart indexes in order to mirror their performance. Robinhood, by the way, they're going to replace Caesars Entertainment as who they're replacing. AppLovin's going to replace a company called Market Access Holdings as well for them on that S&P 500 index. So they finally get on. They've been passed over a couple of times. So it's funny, the stock would go up with the rumors they'd be added. Then they get passed over, stock would go down. But both up here today. And then they're going to get those, like I said, those passive index funds buying the shares as well. So, helping them out. Big news that they are both on that S&P 500 starting September 22nd. Now we're going to look at Nutanix out there. They're a cloud software stock. They're up 8.18% right now. Well, S&P Global added them to the S&P Midcap 400 index. They're replacing Acadia Healthcare. Nutanix is for them. That's why they're up today 8%. Now, it's not as prestigious as the S&P 500, but it's still the S&P Midcap 400 index. Anytime you're listed on an index and part of that fund, you get that bump. 8.27% up for Nutanix right now. And then TransUnion, you know them, the Consumer Credit Reporting Agency. Well, they're up 3.62%. Well, same reason, folks. S&P Midcap 400 index, they're being added to them as well. TransUnion joining that index for that company. So 4 companies joining certain specific indexes. Stock up today, which isn't a shocker out there. That's what happens when you go. And that's why every time there's a rumor that it was going to happen for AppLovin and Robinhood, that's why their stocks went up. And then the disappointment afterwards out there. So congratulations to those stocks. And now let's get into some local stories out there and wrap up this Monday edition here. And SRP, if you've gotten a bill from SRP, I'll even include APS on this, but this story is specifically about SRP. I mean, you're shocked at what your bill price is. I know I am out there. Well, obviously, we've had prolonged high temperatures this year. I saw over the weekend, by the way, my air conditioner upstairs shut off a few times late afternoon, which it hasn't done in a while. SRP is reminding customers about utility assistance programs, obviously because of those increased bills. I was looking up kilowatt hours. So I'm time of use, right? So time of use is between 2 and 8 p.m. Any other time, it's off use time. I get 9 cents per kilowatt hour, according to SRP, in the off time. And I spend a lot of energy in the off time, with the electric car, AC at night, etc. On time, between 2 and 8, 22 cents per kilowatt hour is what they charge you. Dear God, turn nothing on between 2 and 8 p.m., folks, with those pricing out there as well, right? So I did see also the peak summer, billing was over with this cycle, according to my bill I opened yesterday. So they'll bring down the pricing a little bit out there. But the other big news you need to know if you take advantage of this or get into a little bit of trouble, that summer disconnection moratorium where they don't turn you off in July and August. Well, they announced that it will end on September 9th. You need to get up on your bill by then, or you will get disconnected. But they also, SRP is telling you about that you're encouraged to seek help through SRP or some of those nonprofit partners like AZCEND, AZCEND is where you look that up. You can find it on the SRP website, by the way, to avoid any disruption in your service if you cannot make that bill payment. The utility will continue to have a moratorium during any National Weather Service extreme heat warnings that pop up. after September 9th. And we all know that happens from time to time out there. And the other thing about this story that you need to know is SRP spokesperson, her name's Jackie Cantarellon. She came out, and this is on KJazz, was getting, in one of the stories I was reading about this, that Jackie Casteron told SRP spokesperson told KJazz, and they emphasized that if you do get behind, it's important to seek help early to avoid that disconnection. Because the longer you wait, the closer it gets to that time, less help they can give you coming up here. So just heads up, everybody. September 9th, that moratorium of not turning your power off comes quickly here coming up. So heads up, everybody. Now, the company that owns the University of Phoenix. It's Apollo Group, right? I believe it's what they're still called. I don't know if they were bought out afterwards. I'm guessing there. I should have looked that up. Well, they're planning to take the for-profit school actually public now. This is a latest update in the saga of University of Phoenix, and it comes in the aftermath of University of Idaho failing to actually acquire the University of Phoenix. If you remember that story. This filing has been made with the SEC, and it reveals the plans for the University of Phoenix for an initial public offering. The University of Idaho had planned to acquire University of Phoenix for about $685 million, but the Idaho Attorney General filed a lawsuit to prevent that deal from moving forward, all because of allegations over open meeting violations that occurred in that buying process. Well, the Idaho State Board of Education, actually, when that lawsuit happened, they decided to terminate the deal earlier this year with the University of Phoenix. And interesting enough, in that time frame, University of Phoenix paid the Idaho school, University of Idaho, more than $12 million in legal fees just to have them back out of the deal at that time. So IPO might be coming here for University of Phoenix out there. I don't know who has interest in that, but something for you there. And now let's move over to Mesa in the East Valley. And Mesa City Council is voting today on whether to lease 25 acres of city-owned land to a developer. This is all for that cul-de-sac Tempe. It's a retail and residential space. It was once billed as America's first car-free community. It's been out there for a long time, and it's a parcel near University and Mesa Drive. It's known as Site 17 is what they call it. But every other attempt to develop this area, well, it's basically failed. And it's failed miserably and not been able to continue on. The most recent plan includes retail and 1,000 residential units. It'll be developed in 3 phases. Mesa's manager of urban transformation did come out and say that the new development would close the chapter on Site 17. Well, we'll hold our breath and see if it's actually developed for that. They did say the development would be beneficial for businesses over there in Mesa. They also say the site development would not be car-free anymore. That was the original selling point of it. But it would be similar to an urban environment and less dependent on cars, is how they're saying it's going to go now. So if it's approved, the lease would be $15,000 up front and then $5,000 annually so long as construction is taking place on the site is the deal. Vote coming today over there in Mesa, University, Mesa Drive area. So very, kind of close to Tempe as well on that north side of Mesa up there by that 202 from that perspective. And hey, it's football season, right? College football weekend is done. First NFL weekend is done. At least the Cardinals made it out with a win this weekend, unlike Arizona State. Arizona won down there in Tucson. But that means we're getting closer to the end of the year in bowl season, right? And now the organization that actually puts on the Fiesta Bowl, which if you don't know is one of the most high-profile postseason games involved in the playoffs, college football playoffs and things. Well, they want people in the Valley to look at it differently than just being the Fiesta Bowl as the only thing that they do out there. Well, this group was formerly known as the Fiesta Bowl Organization. It was a nonprofit entity, and they've now rebranded itself, and they're now called the Fiesta Sports Foundation. It's adopted the slogan, quote, "Our season never ends," unquote. As part of the changes, the Fiesta Sports Foundation, well, they've reworked how it takes donations toward several of its causes, not just the Fiesta Bowl. Well, the rebrand is supposed to keep the historic and iconic nature of the actual Fiesta Bowl game, but they want to tie it to other events out there, other programs, other initiatives that they put on throughout the year. So it's not all about the Fiesta Bowl. If you remember back in the early 2000s, I think early 2010 timeframe, there was a big scandal that went through the Fiesta Bowl deals. People went to jail, fraud, that type of stuff, bribery. Well, Bowl leadership has made significant efforts to bring the organization back into good standing with the community. They started many community-centered programs and initiatives at that time. Fiesta Sports Foundation wants the broader community to understand what it does besides just putting on that football game. The Fiesta Bowl, which happens, New Year's Eve, I think, is when it mostly is, but New Year's Day time frame. Outside of putting on its two bowl games, don't forget it's also, the Fiesta Bowl and the Rate Bowl that happens there at Chase Field as well. Well, they give money directly to teachers in classrooms through its Wishes for Teachers. It supports and promotes high school football in Arizona, even girls flag football here in Arizona they support. They also give and partner with multiple charitable organizations and causes throughout the state for the community-focused parts of the organization that are lesser known that they do out there. So they want to make you more aware of that stuff. And for the rebrand, they did bring in Noble Predictive Insights. They wanted to research how the organization was seen by the marketplace. Interesting results here. Total positive perception of the Fiesta Sports Foundation, well, it went from 50 to 76% after respondents learned about its charitable initiatives, according to Noble's surveys. Yeah, they never did enough about the other charity stuff. You just assumed it was, they do the Fiesta Bowl, then they shut down for a year, right? The Fiesta Bowl, as I told you earlier, is part of that college football playoff. So it's going to be a national spotlight game for a bunch of years to come. And the board there of this new entity, renamed entity, wants the foundation's community programming, youth sports programming, and educational support. Well, they want it to be notable and recognizable as things that they do besides that big game out there as well. So they want to find more businesses and charities to partner up with. And then in a lot of cases, they just want to take existing partnerships and then go deeper with those partnerships as well, with those charitable sides and supporting high school football, girls flag football, etc. out there. So try to grow up and do some big things there. The Fiesta Bowl is, and what they're looking at. And now, well, finally, I guess a record has been stopped, folks. Yes. But it's an interesting record in terms of, down a little bit, but still a lot of people, right? More than 4 million people went through Sky Harbor International Airport in the month of July. Well, it's a lot of people, but it was down about 1.6% fewer passengers than July of last year. Well, that number last year was just over $4.2 million. We all know, a million people, I should say, not dollars. Geesh. We all know we get less travelers through Arizona in the summertime because of our heat. We became a gateway where international flights flew into town and then people went to other places. That's what drove those numbers up. Little down there in July. And we know summer's been rough for these airlines out there. We also know that cooler months, seasonal sports events, here in Phoenix tend to be when Sky Harbor receives the most travelers. Our summer months have been busy a lot these last few years with that international travel element. With that being down this year, well, they came close to that number, right? About, 4.2 million last year, 4 million this year. So they're close to that number, but still just a little bit down on keeping that side. And they've been hitting the record pretty much every month here for a couple of years. First time I've seen it down in a while out there, folks. And when we come back tomorrow, McCollum on Business Tuesday edition, well, we're going to have some fun tomorrow as well. One more day away from those PPI reports and CPI reports coming out. Big inflation data this week. We'll take a look at the stock market, so much more. So come back and join us. McCollum on Business.